Join us for this two-part interview with Justin Ferrabee, a serial entrepreneur who's co-created a business that combines technology and farming to grow clean food for our tables, literally within miles of their customers. From their formation to their first major retail win, you'll find out how they've used innovation to create a fast-growing food business that's growing its footprint in grocery retail and the lessons they've learned along the way. Thanks for joining us.
For me, it's more about changing systems and the idea that many of the things we do because we did them before and they no longer work for what we're doing. And if we're going to change and be better at sharing this planet, then we're going to have to do things differently.
So let's get into this. You're about to meet Justin Ferrabee, co-founder of Fieldless Farms, a business that's part of a growing response to the global problem of food security. According to the UN, almost a third of the world's population is affected by it, with nearly 800 million people going hungry last year. Through conflict, climate change, economic downturns, and even COVID, these drivers are slowing down progress for people worldwide. What's amazing is that even though we're growing more of those foundational crops, such as wheat and corn, that underpin the food system, that how we use the land is more productive, and that food is generally more affordable, global food insecurity has been on the rise since 2014, and the problem isn't getting any better. In Canada, where Justin's business is located, they deal with an unforgiving climate and an economy that relies on 80% of its produce coming from beyond its borders. That's a tricky situation when you're feeding a country. Canadians learned a lesson during the early distribution of COVID vaccines when the US, its biggest trading partner, stockpiled vaccines, putting aside friendly trading relationships to protect its own population first. Proof that when the chips are down, borders and supply chains aren't as secure as we thought. In this two-part interview, Justin will describe how a background in solar technology began a journey that led to him joining with a diverse team to create a new way of farming clean food for our tables, literally within miles of its customers. Now, let's get to Justin and his amazing food business. I would like to welcome an amazing character, a good friend, Justin Ferrabee, who is one of the co-founders of an amazing new company or early stage company by the name of Fieldless Farms. Justin, thank you so much for joining us for the creators.
Thanks, Robert. Nice to be here.
So, Justin, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about Fieldless Farms? What's it about?
Fieldless Farms is a controlled environment agriculture is the term for it now. It wasn't called that back in the day, but it is an indoor farm or a dark farm or a warehouse farm. The idea is that it has no natural light. The conditions are controlled, and we are growing what we call leafy greens, which is kind of what it says, anything that has a leaf on it, but mostly it's forms of lettuce and things like that. And we grow them in Cornwall, Ontario, where the power is hydropower, all of it's hydropower. And we grow our produce, our test farm is there, our proof of concept farm is there, which is going very well. And we sell the produce from the farm, and we sell it in retail stores in Ottawa.
Amazing. So are you just an amazing salad lover? Or did you just have a real desire to put your efforts into something that was a bit more organic? Like, what brought you to this? What's your background?
I don't know that it started that way. My partners are a combination of things, but the primary partner, John Lomo, who is the chief executive of the farm now, would be classified as a foodie. I'm a renewable energy person, and so I came to this. I was originally doing solar projects, and we were building rooftop solar around the province, and we were doing them in various places. And one of them, we were dealing with Tweed, which is an early day cannabis company at the old Smith Falls Hershey factory, and was talking to them as before they were just getting rolling, and they were very small, and they'd acquired 700,000 square feet, and I was doing solar. So I said, well, let me put solar on your roof. And he said, sure. And he invited me to join him in cannabis, and I declined, which is one of those things I will always feel a sense of regret about. But yeah, they went on to do very well. But at the time I said, well, why don't I take 100,000 square feet of space here at a discount, and I'll do lettuce, and you can do cannabis. And so that was the genesis of it. And we've been doing some thought about it. I had been thinking about it a little bit as it related to renewable energy projects. Now, that didn't work out over there, but the idea stuck. And it was really from there. That's about 8 years ago now, where we started to research it. We got the rights to some technology. And the idea is more that the change in the environment, we import 99% of our produce from other places, whether that's California or Chile or Mexico, or in some cases, Israel or anywhere in the world. And that has a lot of risks to it. There's climate risk with droughts and the like. There's gas price risk in terms of the distribution. There's currency risk. There's trade risks. You see in the pandemic, our borders were shut down. They didn't shut down the produce, but they could have. So there's all kinds of risks, and those things are managed by a distributor who then sells to a retailer, and they will source different produce from different places, and then they'll package it. And the renewable energy idea was produce is sold on a spot market right now still, and you go in and you buy produce depending on where it came from and the going price of it. And the idea is if you can control the variables, we repatriate our supply chain to Canada, which we need the independence to grow our own food for all the reasons. B, we control all the variables so that you're able to produce the same product on a regular basis. And the goal at the end of the day was to say you wouldn't need a distributor. You can go directly to a retailer and you can have a consistent product. So what that does is allow you to go to a more consistent contracting. And in renewable energy, when you invest hundreds or millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into a renewable energy project, you want to know that you've got someone who's going to buy the power, and you want to know the prices. So you have what's called a power purchase agreement. And it's a long-term price, and so it allows you to make investments and to optimize and to produce. In this case, we're looking for long-term produce purchase agreements where retailers can know what they're going to get. They can get at the same thing all the time. So it was really initially more around the idea of a business model change and a technology-enabled change. And then there was an environmental component to it. And all of those things started to come together. And when so many variables seem right, you're using renewable energy, you're repatriating your supply chain, you're growing organic or controlled environments. There's no pesticides or herbicides. The produce doesn't have to be cleaned. When you get it out of the box, you can just eat it because it's never been dirty. It's never needs to be cleaned. So you go through all of these things, and you start to be able to provide stability for markets and a better quality product. And then in time, you can brand the product as a quality product. And so all those things came together. And we just kept going at it. And it took a long time because timing wasn't right. The early days, it felt like it was a lab coat kind of thing, and not everybody was into it. It's much more popular now, but it wasn't at the time. And so persisting through all of that and getting technology and learning the organic processes and setting things up, it took a long time. But the genesis was a combination of my partners who were into the food side and me, power purchase agreement, which is not a natural entry point.
Amazing. So what, at the end of the day, it's salad green. How much of the backstory that you provide us now, how much of that was a factor in attracting retailers to carry the product?
It's leafy greens now, or salad mixes now, but that's just the start. That's the easier thing to grow. Lots of people are growing it now. In the U.S., there's some pretty big vendors who are growing stuff. And in many cases, they're the technology provider and the grower. And so they're designed for certain things. But our belief is that leafy greens is just the beginning, that we'll start SKU by SKU and work our way through the produce department. And you'll see more and more innovations that are coming along. And Fieldless Farms is positioning itself as a farmer and not as a technology company. So we will find the right technology for the produce we're growing. And the idea in that is that it's not just the leafy greens that were coming into this or just making the salad. This is rethinking food or organic food in our country.
And so when you presented that story to the retailer, how much of that was a factor in why they chose to carry your products?
Well, our first customer and main customer is Farm Boy, and they're a fantastic customer. They care about their food. They care about their food a great deal. And so they're very disciplined and discerning and discriminating in terms of what they get. But they're also running a business that is a high throughput business. And we approached them early on and said, we're going to do this. And they said, great. Once you've grown something, come see us. And so we're trying to get somebody to say, I'll buy it. So that we can use the customer to help raise the money so we can build the farm and then we can sell it to them.
Right.
And it doesn't work like that.
Right.
I mean, they're still buying stuff. They're very supportive, and they worked with us all the way along. But at the end of the day, you got to grow something. They got to see it. They got to taste it. They got to know that you can deliver. They've got real problems around volume and around quality and making sure that things work. So they were very supportive. We worked with them over to get the test farm up and that rolling, and we're doing well with them. But they weren't in a position. The business model doesn't change just because you have the idea of a changed business model. The business model changes when you can deliver stability over a long, consistent period of time. And we're still a long way from changing the business model, but we have changed the way things grow. And as it started to come, and the produce is being delivered in a consistent manner, and we're seeing other places have indoor farms, and people become much more comfortable with it. We're seeing that there is an interest in it, and that customers they appreciate the consistent brand. And it's not very often that you have customers who will reach out to you as a produce producer with emails and other things, and talk about how great the product is. And so we're getting some of that, and Farm Boy's been a big part of that. We needed a partner to work with through that, and they've been a very good partner.
So what I think you're saying there is, at the end of the day, they need to know that there's a product that is consistently on their shelf that their customers love. And if you basically use a Harry Potter sorting hat to produce that, really doesn't matter. That does not trump the fact that at the end of the day, they want customers who love the products.
That's right. And they care about that, and they care about their own brand promise to their customers and the consistency in the delivery. And they've got their own standards they have to meet, and we have to meet that. And in many cases, challenging the existing infrastructure, you don't get to have a lower expectation or a lower performance standard because you're new or because you're trying something different. Actually, the opposite is true. The same standard applies to you, and they're expecting something better or more from you. So you end up having to do better than everybody else at huge disadvantage. And I think that's a natural sorting for new ideas. It often doesn't feel fair, but in many cases, it's a very appropriate way to force you to get better and to refine. And the business is many things. It's farming, but it's also, you've got to choose what you grow. It's a complicated organic process. So you can't accelerate the growth of something. You can improve it, but to test something, you got to wait for its full growth cycle. So you've got a lot of experimentation that goes into that. It's still a business, so you still got to do the funding and manage the costs and all of that. And there are three of us who were originally founders, and one Paul Gardner, who's the CFO and is a venture capitalist, and John, who's a foodie, and myself. And then we had a few other people who joined very quickly with us. Someone from retail, Patrick Knowles from retail, and we got a few other people. And so it started to, you needed those diverse perspectives to make something work. It's still complicated.
And how much of a factor is, before I ask that question, I just want to make sure that this point is kind of nailed, because I think what happens with a lot of businesses that I come across that have invested so much in the technical aspects of how they produce what they produce, that takes over their imagination. And in fact, they fall in love more with the process than they do with the finished product to a certain extent. And I think that, one of the things that I've come across many times is that, it's like, it doesn't matter. The green credentials don't matter if you're not as good or better than the product they're already buying. So at the end of the day, you are going to live or die on whether my salad tastes awesome compared to the salad greens that I purchased previously.
100%.
So does any of this backstory, do you think any of it has an effect on the consumer?
I think you often have to go in without any differentiator in order to be better and just to fit in. And then in time, you can differentiate. And the differentiation for us will be many things. One is the quality of the produce, and the way it's grown is safer. And it has it's actually negative carbon because it actually consumes carbon, and it's distributed. It's grown here, and it comes from Cornwall to Ottawa where it's distributed. So it's there's environmental factors to it. There's a consistency in the product. There's the quality of the absence, the organic nature or the absence of pesticides and herbicides. And so all of those things start to come together, and a customer starts to build an expectation. And if you can deliver consistently, then you've got the makings of a brand. And we believe that in time, you can have different varietals, and we'll be doing some innovation on flavors and the way you use the salad mixes and the other produce, and how we grow them and how we bring them together. And that will differentiate the product. And in time, they'll build a loyalty to that. And for the most part, there's been very few branding of produce. We've seen Dole with bananas and a few other things. And you do see President's Choice, for example, will have its generic brand or its house brand. That's the closest we've seen to branding. Whereas in the packaged goods, you see branding is the primary driver. And so our belief is that if you can deliver a consistent product, that consumers can start to become attached to its quality and rely on its predictable quality and value, that you build brand loyalty. And I think we're already starting to see that on a very small scale.
Amazing.
And the other thing I would say is you're exactly right that there's a lot of attraction to the new mechanics of something and not necessarily to the impact that it has on a customer. A lot of the stuff that we worried about early on, the customer is opaque to the customer. They don't actually care. They want to know a little bit where it's going. They want to know some of the attributes, but they don't get into all the detail on it. And it was an early decision for us not to become a technology company, which many others are. And I had grown up in technology in the late 90s and saw the bust of 2000. And what I observed there, and all the partnership team had observed there, is you would be, if you were selling customer relationship management system, Siebel was the one at the time. And everybody wanted Siebel. They got great valuations. So everyone was building software and they're trying to publicly list and they're just trying to catch the hype and create great value for themselves and others. And then the bust happened and Siebel disappeared. And then Salesforce was the next one. And so you lost one and the next technology was the winner. But in both cases, IBM was the integrator. IBM knew the customer. IBM understood the customer's business. IBM owned the customer. And so they just changed the technology. If you want this technology, you want that technology, we'll help you do that. And so it became very clear that the deployment and the value generation from all of these things was controlled by the integrator, the one close to the customer. And so we concluded that we didn't want to develop our own technology, which we were able to do and had kind of started. But we were going to use other people's technologies and we're going to buy them and we're going to use them and we're going to optimize them and we're going to innovate in the white space between the technologies and in the customer experience and in the branding and in the quality of the varietals and where we source them and the optimization of this equipment. It's early days. It's kind of like buying Kubota tractors. These are tractors, and if it's a better tractor, we'll get the better tractor. And so what we're finding already is we've raised some money. We're expanding our operations, and we're getting different technologies that will be bespoke for certain types of growing. And that's going to allow us to better optimize for those products.
I hope you enjoyed this first part of our interview with Justin Ferrabee, co-founder of Fieldless Farms. Click on the link to join us for part 2 to find out what gives Justin his greatest satisfaction as an entrepreneur and the 3 lessons he's taken away from his experience.